Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. Before we begin, my apologies if my voice sounds a bit weird. My family and I are in the middle of a move and I'm in a makeshift studio. Hopefully we'll be back to normal soon. Thanks for understanding, and now let's get started. This post is from the subreddit Relationships and it's by user No More Compliments. My boyfriend, 21 male, of 4 months, doesn't really give me, 21 female, much affection anymore. So, my boyfriend really isn't big on compliments. I've talked to him about this, but not much has improved, except for the occasional forehead kiss and "you look cute." I've even been working out lately, and when I ask him what he thinks of my ass, he'll say something like, "Yeah, looks good, it's getting there." That's not what I want to hear. I want to hear that it looks great and that he loves it and that he's proud of me for working so hard. Not, "it's getting there." That makes it seem like he's not satisfied with it. I'm a thin girl, and I don't want my ass to get much bigger anyhow. But if I tell him, "give me better compliments," then it just sucks because I know they won't be genuine. The kicker though, he hasn't worked out properly in months, and yet I still compliment his dad bod without telling him what he needs to improve. I do genuinely find him attractive though. I suppose I just wish he did the same for me. Hell, I've been showing Av progress, and when I asked him to look at my progress on my ass and my abs, he had me stand sideways and said, "suck in your stomach," before the other comment. That hurt my feelings. Keep in mind, I'm pretty skinny. I don't have much of a gut in the first place. If there is anything, it's because I have to, store food in there. He used to compliment me a lot when we first started going out. He even serenaded me on his guitar. Now, it's like a blessing if he so much as kisses me on the forehead. If he does that in front of another person, that's even crazier. The only time he does give me compliments, it's when he's trying to F me, and it's all just physical stuff. It makes me feel like a piece of meat. He never compliments my personality or calls me talented or anything, unless I'm specifically feeling crappy about it. And at that point, it just seems like he's just showing pity. He once called me the funniest woman he's known, but that was a while back and I haven't heard anything similar since. He has never even bothered to ask to see any of my dance videos, and he knows I've studied dance for a decade of my life. I brought this up to him several times in the past, but I'm done asking because if he doesn't care enough about my hobbies to bother asking about them, I'm not going to force them down his throat. It's just ridiculous because he's an artist and I am constantly encouraging him, checking out his work, etc. And a part of me is a bit jealous that his previous girlfriend of 3 months had an entire album made for her and given to her at Christmas like 6 months after they split up. I've had like 1 or 2 pieces, if that. This may seem petty, but I just have this bad habit of comparing myself to her because he's emphasized during a fight that she was a virgin. I'm floozy when I'm single, and I'll admit that, but it really bummed me out to be compared to his ex negatively for that reason. I've kind of lost that spark for him, and I no longer feel loved by him. I'm considering just breaking it off because it feels all so stagnant and not romantic. However, if I were to do so, I know he'd come pouring out with how much I mean to him, and then that would ultimately get me to stay because I know that's what I've been craving to hear. So that's the thing. How do I get him to express this more often, the way I do? Boy, OP, there is so much wrong here on both sides that I'm just gonna try to focus on the big parts. First thing is, I know a lot of people say you cannot dance to a Pink Floyd song, but you should definitely dance to Run Like Hell. Your relationship is just 4 months in and he's already taking you for granted. The previous relationship apparently lasted 3 months. He love bombs people. He made a whole album for somebody in 3 months and then gave it to her after they broke up. And you, OP, well, you were the funniest woman in the world just a few months ago, and now apparently you're not anymore, or he just doesn't bring it up. And again, this is just 4 months in. OP, you are trying to get him to do something that just doesn't come natural to him because he is apparently very self-absorbed. You can't do that unless you try to manipulate them, in which case your relationship has officially become toxic. You should just break up and then go no contact or avoid him so you don't get sucked in. And also, you need to try to work on that, not getting manipulated or sucked in because you hear something that you know is actually not genuine. And about you, OP, I think your insecurities are making you be all over the place because you're constantly trying to get his attention by working out and all that stuff that you might be doing that for yourself, but you want him to compliment you. When you prompt him and he doesn't do it, you get upset. But then when he does do it, when he wants sex, well then you feel like a piece of meat, which is understandable. So this is toxic all over, and it's 4 months in. I think I've said that like 3 times. Just get out of this. Figure out what you want in a partner, and then that's what you look for. Just don't throw yourself in every relationship or in any relationship because it might happen. Take your time. So in summary, OP, I'd say break up, work on your insecurities and what you want in a relationship, and then just let it happen organically. Don't force it. And what do you guys think about this whole thing? What would you do if you were in OP's shoes? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see what they said. Happy Pillows says, he seems like a neffin' delight, and you are a soft pushover. Your problem is that you aren't really respecting yourself, considering how much of a tool this dude has been. And worse, you know you should break it off, but you're already admitting you'll let it all slide because it's something I'd been craving to hear. You can't force him into pouring out his emotions when you present him with the breakup ultimatum because what he says might not be genuine. You need to realize how real life works. You don't just call a spell on somebody to make them reciprocate your actions and words. If he likes you as much as you like him, he will reciprocate. If not, he won't. People don't change easily, and as you get older, you'll realize this and act accordingly. And OP responds, you're misunderstanding me. I'm not saying I want to break up with him to hear his outpouring of emotions. I want to know what I can do to change it so that it doesn't come to that. So that he understands how and what to say without me feeding him compliments that he'll just spit back at me. And out of curiosity, what specifically did he do which you think made him a tool? I feel like there are several things, but sometimes I can't tell if I'm just overreacting or if other people feel the same way. Deleted says, you're not crazy for wanting to feel important, respected, appreciated in a relationship, but that's why his behavior is so gross. You're not describing a guy who maybe has some issues communicating the affection that he feels. You're describing a guy who doesn't seem to feel affectionate towards you. You've communicated your need to him, and he's responded with diddly squat. I don't even necessarily think comparing yourself to his ex is juvenile. I mean, in general, comparing yourself to others is bad news. But what you're doing is comparing his behavior in that relationship to his behavior in this one. When he loves a girl, he writes them an entire album, apparently. He can't even muster the energy to be interested in your hobbies and passions. Jake the Snake says, so, you called him out on your post for being out of shape, but he's strict about your body. He only compliments you when he wants to have sex. He doesn't compliment you ever or show much affection. Why are you with him? Also, you have your own issues. Look at how many times you wrote about how you want to be noticed and how you're jealous he hasn't written as many songs about you compared to his ex. Like, does this really matter to you in the long run? You need to figure out if this is worth it to you and do you think you deserve better. There are a ton of complaints and all of them are about how he doesn't care about you or your hobbies. You can sit here and complain and wish you could change him, or you could have a talk with him like an adult and voice your concerns. And OP responds, it never used to bother me and I realize comparing myself to his ex is juvenile behavior. That's why I mentioned it. It only bothered me after he had compared me to her, and it was really hurtful and has been hard to get out of my mind. I can't figure out why you're being so hostile. If your advice is to break up with him, then just say so. I'm asking for advice on how to talk to him. Obviously, as I've mentioned above, I've tried talking to him. Being noticed by him does matter to me because I'm his girlfriend. I don't think I'm crazy for wanting that. Alright, well, the community's pointing out some pretty big points for OP to, make her understand that this is not a good thing, but it doesn't seem like OP is getting the answers that she wanted, and she's not really kinda paying attention to them. Anyways, let's move on to the update to see what happened next and how the story ends. There was a lot of stuff I didn't mention in my first post, because I guess I knew everyone would just tell me to break up with him, and I wasn't prepared to do that. This took some courage to write, and I'm sorry if I come off as spineless in the events of this story. Believe me, I now see how pathetic I was. Even at that time, I kind of knew it. Anyway, long story short, after months of being in the relationship, the problem really wasn't just his new emotionally distant coldness. He was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and would sometimes get upset at me over my past, i.e. occasionally sleeping with men while single, and make me cry for it. But when I'd threaten to leave, the tender side of him would kick in and he'd promise to change. It sounds so clearly emotionally abusive when I phrase it that simply, but it's such a different experience when you're actually living through it. It's easy to dismiss abusers in movies when they're nothing but mean and you're an outsider looking into a brief snippet of a relationship. It's a lot harder when real people are much more nuanced and memories kick in. Especially when they apologize and tell you that they know their mental illness is hurting you in ways you absolutely don't deserve, but that they truly care about you and are going to get help because they are weak with not much to call their own. Nonetheless, I found myself walking on eggshells all the time about my past due to his raging insecurity. One time, I just couldn't have sex, so he took care of himself watching smut next to me while I cried. He acted like it wasn't a big deal because I told him before that it was fine if he's someone that watches smut. I didn't tell my friends because I felt so humiliated, so I just figured it really wasn't a big deal. I mistook his willingness to use me for sex as a continuation of his affectionate side. In reality, I think he was just keeping me around as a sex toy because he'd invite me over and then ignore me for hours. I honestly can't believe I ever tolerated that stuff and was willing to forgive it. He broke up with me at 6 months, and though I could see it coming, it still hurt badly. I have to admit it, that was the nicest thing he ever did for me. But the story doesn't end there. I stupidly would still have sex with him. At the time, I tried to justify it by taking my sexuality into my own hands, but his verbal abuse got worse, massively worse. He'd berate me, call me an effing idiot, a lying floozy, and I'd stay because I so desperately wanted to see that good side of him again. It was like he was split into two separate human beings. I desperately wanted him to see the good in me again, and it was hard to accept that a man who once held me in his arms and made me feel like the most perfect woman on earth could now call me a floozy and roll his eyes at my tears. After one night of being berated over text for hours and crying, I even went to his doorstep and gave him a $100 watch that was supposed to arrive months before but only just came in the mail. I reached rock bottom. It was pathetic of me to literally give him a gift after he did nothing but hurt me. I just wanted him to like me that badly and see me like he used to, as more than just some floozy. I went there fully expecting him to yell at me and call me disgusting like he had been all night. But he asked to hug me and told me we could have sex and cuddle and watch a TV show. We had sex and he kicked me out. I felt like a numb, used shell. I drove directly from his house to a counselor. Boy, did it help. I learned that it is, in fact, okay to be unforgiving. It was hard to get over, and I did sleep with him a few times after out of some desperate sense of loneliness and habit. But I eventually had enough. I told him I was no longer doing this with him and left. It was freeing. The story should end there, right? Of course it doesn't. Months later, he contacts me and says he wants to apologize. At this point, I recognize his behavior as toxic, but an apology was all I had ever wanted. Just a mere acknowledgement that what I was put through wasn't okay. I didn't want to get back together with him at all, but having dealt with that pain for months, I guess I just wanted to believe that even he wasn't completely heinous and that a lot of his behavior was due to mental illness. I clarified to him that we wouldn't be sleeping together and that I just wanted an apology. I'm sure most of you would have seen what I couldn't, but I was naive. I thought maybe that other side of him was back and that he actually felt bad. Ha! He apologized, but that wasn't all he did. Long story short, I filed a report against him over that night and he's been suspended from the school for 2 semesters. I haven't talked to him in over a year now, and I am not ever going to again. I know this has all been doom and gloom so far, but ever since then, my life has actually been going pretty well. I moved cities, got into a program I wanted, and dated a couple of guys. I know I don't want to be in a relationship because I want to focus on myself, so it's all very casual and lighthearted. I no longer tolerate dating men if they disrespect me. Again, this took me a couple of months to learn, and I did have some pitfalls, but I really grew a spine and cut out some toxic people from my life. In fact, I'm currently dating one of the most respectful men I've ever met, and he's never once tried to pressure me into doing something I didn't want to do. I'm a lot more introspective and on guard about my dating life, and it's helped to weed out some douchebags. I'm almost ashamed of myself for ever having stayed with someone that cruel, but I've kept good to promise so far never to let it happen again. It's okay to be unforgiving. Wow, OP, first of all, I'm sorry that you had to go through all of that to get to where you are now. It absolutely sucks, and yeah, you definitely didn't deserve to be with somebody that cruel. But it does seem that you're doing a lot better now and you understand everything that was going on. So here's wishing you the best in the future. Take care, OP, and thank you for sharing. Now, I definitely need a mood booster, so if you do too, then stick with me and let's finish the video with that. This post is from the subreddit Malicious Compliance and it's by user Anna120. Karen wants her breakfast. I work at a hotel. I'm on the graveyard shift and we have a continental breakfast from 6 to 9 and my shift ends at 7, so I'm in charge of setting up the breakfast. It's not a big deal, it's a smallish hotel and a small breakfast, but we do have waffles and a couple of waffle makers. Basically, guests come in, get their batter out of the dispenser and make their waffles so they're fresh and hot. We have 2 seasons where I live, winter and construction season, and we get work crews that stay at the hotel on the boss's dime and then go out to whatever job they're working on. And we very frequently get this one crew of guys. They're great guys, they're polite, and they don't leave the breakfast room a mess, but their shifts start super early in the morning. We also get hunters who are in and out before 6, so I usually have everything set up by 5:30 for them. I say usually because I'm only human, sometimes I'm running late, it happens, but I'm never more than 5 minutes after 6. The workers and the hunters are super chill about it. They get it and don't complain about waiting a couple of extra minutes. I also feel the need to add that the foreman is amongst them, so he's eating when they are. So one day I was running a little late. I got caught up with what I was doing and kind of lost track of time. So I was rushing to get everything set up while the guys were patiently waiting in the lobby. Enters Karen, who sees the time, sees the breakfast isn't ready, and decides to yell at me for it, saying that the sign says breakfast is from 6 to 9 and should be started exactly at 6. I tried to keep working while talking to her so I could get the breakfast ready, but she decided that was rude. So I had to stop what I was doing and stand there with her yelling at me until she ran out of breath and I could finish setting up. Karen complains to the manager. I get a verbal warning that I have to have breakfast open by 6 as I was about 15 minutes behind because Karen was yelling at me when I would have been less than 4 if she'd let me effing finish. Well, Karen was a stayover and she was in the next day before 6. The manager refunded part of her stay under guest satisfaction, and I think she was hoping to find me doing something wrong so she could get another refund, but I was on my game and had everything set up by 5:30 like usual. She came in before the workers saw me sitting at the front desk and sneered about me being lazy when I should be setting up breakfast. I told her the breakfast was already ready to go as the construction workers were entering. But I stood and walked over to block the doorway to the breakfast room and told them that I couldn't let them in because the manager said I had to start the breakfast at exactly 6. So I couldn't let them back until then. And as I was saying this, I'm looking directly at Karen. Slowly, heads turn and Karen goes red, mutters something about coming back later and leaves. So I let the guys back. They said it was funny, and like I said, the workers had to wait a little after 6 before with no problem, and the foreman was there. To be clear, if I thought this stunt was going to cost them their breakfast, I never would have done it, but I knew that wasn't going to be a problem. I didn't see Karen again, so either she didn't come back or she returned after I left, but either way, I didn't hear another word from the manager about it. Do you want your breakfast at 6? You're gonna get your breakfast at 6. Nicely done, OP. Subtle and very effective. Thank you for sharing. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out. So here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.